Now it's time for our regular health checkup. And we've all heard about eldest child or middle child syndrome, or the youngest getting away with everything. And the stunning revelation today, Catherine is not the youngest, she's actually the oldest. Can you believe? This is a question, of course, that families have long debated. Does birth order actually matter? Well, a huge new study involving millions of siblings suggests that it might, and might even have a difference for your health. Paediatrician Dr. Linny Fuong joins us for this week's Health Check. Linny, good morning.
Good morning.
You are the oldest?
Oldest, of course.
I knew that about you. You're a sensible oldest, not like James, who I would never suspected to be the oldest.
You radiate.
I radiate firstborn.
Oldest.
Oh,
You do. You're organised. Always prepared. I'm sure they'll love that. So what did this study say about how it can affect your health?
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of this study, so firstly, it's a US insurance claim-based study, which looks at over 10 million families, and they look at first and second-born siblings and whether or not there was a pattern and association with certain health conditions. And so what they found was that there were they looked at over hundreds of different health conditions, and there were about 150 of them where there was an association with either firstborns or secondborns. And some of the, overall information that they discovered was that with firstborns, there was a higher rate of recording of conditions like neurodevelopmental conditions, but also allergic conditions like hay fever and food allergies. And then second-born children were more likely to have diagnoses like gastrointestinal disorders and migraines later in life. So again, there was no, this is not a cause and effect thing, this was an association. So they said that definitely could not say that if you were firstborn, you were more likely to have a neurodevelopmental disorder. And secondborn, it doesn't mean that you're necessarily protected.
Okay, why is this?
Yeah.
Just putting theories out there.
Of course.
My friends have had their first kids and they're all about it and they read all the books. Actually, my parents didn't. They did this with the second and third, but that's another story. But they read all the books. They're all about it.
Yes.
And then the second one comes along and they're like, oh, been there, done that.
Yeah.
It'll be fine. Maybe the first child will raise the second child. I mean, are we even checking? Is that what it is?
Yeah, so there's lots of information about there's lots of theories about why birth order might have an influence on health, and certainly some of the things that we know about are that obviously pregnancies are different, so not all pregnancies are the same, and every subsequent pregnancy has a different impact on the child that's being born. We know that families are different at that particular stage, whether it's from a social perspective, a welfare perspective. Parents are older, they are wiser, their health-seeking behaviours might change, and so there's a combination of things. And I think what this study highlights is that there are no, even though children are born into the same family, there are different social and biological differences that occur as each child is grown and develops in the world.
Should parents act differently depending on which order their child is born in? Because I feel like parents with their first are more likely to be like, oh my God, I've never experienced this before, I need medical advice. Whereas once you're 2, 3, you might be like, nah, they'll be fine. See how they're doing tomorrow.
Yeah, so certainly I would not want someone to read this study or hear about this and decide that they're going to act differently depending on if their child is firstborn or secondborn. What we know is, you're right, like a first-time parent is more likely to be maybe a bit more health-seeking, a bit more worried, unsure about how to act, and therefore get some help. And so I think that, in terms of the fundamentals of parenting, really you want to treat each child differently. You want to be able to do all the preventative things as you normally would. So the important things are sleep, nutrition, smoke-free environments, vaccinations where appropriate, and also if there are any signs or symptoms that you're worried about, actually seeking medical attention.
Does the research tell us anything about biology and whether that has any effect on this? Yeah,
so this study was actually just an observational study, so it didn't go into the details, but what it found was that, what it hypothesised was that there would be differences because of, all the things that we talked about, so social differences and biological differences.
So what's your advice?
My
to
advice?
families, yeah, if they're looking after their first, their second, their third?
Oh.
How should you treat your kids?
I think my advice would be to treat each one individually and not to assume. And definitely being firstborn, unfortunately, is not more superior than any other.
Are you sure about that?
Well,
because we feel it is. And Lily, we talk to you, and that's just another example.
Well, I mean,
of how
we're all
it is.
firstborn, and you know, we're all pretty great, I think. But yeah, no, I think treat each child differently, and you know, treat their individual differences.
Lenny, thank you very much. We love your work. Thank you for keeping that conversation on the rails as well. We've been hearing from so many of you at home. Gail is the youngest of 6 and she says she could get away with most things. Michael says that he was the responsible eldest. Good work, Michael. Love to hear that.
Good work from Michael. Now let's get over to a man who was born 4th in his family. Charles Bryce has already admitted to being the golden boy, the golden child of the Bryces, but we knew that already.